Hi there, it's Mike Thornton from Pro Tools Expert, and Waves have recently released a new noise suppressor plugin, the NS1, and as promised, when I posted the news about it, I said I'd take a look at it as soon as I had my hands on it, and that is now. The first piece of audio I've got is a piece to camera that was recorded outside a busy housing estate with traffic going past. Let's take a listen to that.
In the summer of 2009, the PCC of the parish of St Luke met to consider how we take forward our mission. Because it's very clear to us that...
So let's take a look now and just wind in the NS1 and see what it does to it.
There were very few people coming. Most of the members of the congregation were not resident in the area. One or two were. But we considered a proposal that I put
So there we go. If I bypass it,
out of the church completely and to change what we do.
Back in.
And to relocate to the community room in Wilmcott House, which is one of the housing blocks in the area. It's one where there are lots of young families located, and this was a group we thought that the church wasn't particularly reaching in.
So there we go. That's for a single control noise reduction unit. That is doing quite well. So let's take a look at the next one. Now this is my classic, although it's a simulation, effectively it's a simulation of a real world scenario where we get quite a noisy recording from a mini disc recorder. So let's just take a listen to that. This is a typical example of a poorly recorded item using a dynamic microphone on a domestic mini disc recorder. So you can hear there's a lot of hiss. So if we now just put that highlight so it'll loop and start to wind that in. This is a typical example of a poorly recorded item using a dynamic microphone on a domestic mini disc recorder. This is a typical example of a poorly recorded item using a dynamic microphone on a domestic mini disc recorder. So that's the after, and here is the before. This is a typical example of a poorly recorded item using a dynamic microphone on a domestic mini disc recorder. And you can hear that it's just starting to gate or pump a little bit the noise background. And it's at this point that I would really like to have a recovery control. And of course, it being a one control device, we don't have it. So let's take a look at a stereo option. So here we have on this track here, Russ down at NAMM 2012.
Hey, it's Russ here at NAMM 2012. I'm back with Bobby Lombardi. Bobby, some people don't know that you were one of the people behind 11
So wind
Rack,
it in.
all of that kind of stuff. Are you a closet rocker? And tell us all about how that all happened.
I'd like to think that most of the people that were from Digidesign and as that transition to Avid, we were all closet rockers. I mean, it all came from music at that point.
Again, it's making a good attempt at it, but I would really love another control that I could change the recovery or maybe adjust the frequency range. So here we have an example from a recording of an interview in a London church.
Now I'm in the interior of the church and I'm standing before
and I'm going to wind it in
by Pietro Annigoni, which to me depicts a nuclear
now that's
explosion.
Handled really quite nicely, all the high frequency noise, but the low frequency stuff, the rumble from the traffic outside, is still there.
When I first caught sight of this picture many years ago was that this was Mary with the child Jesus.
So what I thought we'd do with this one is to take a high pass filter, and I'm using the Waves RenEQ4 here, and basically just wind it in.
Now I'm in the interior of the church and I'm standing before a
so it's the filter is now taking most of that low frequency elements out, and so now if we go back to the NS1,
carrying the infant Jesus away from the blast. But perhaps, Father, you can explain a little bit more about the painting.
Well, my understanding when I first caught sight of this,
the NS1 has a really good chance of dealing with it. So for me, one of the things that's well worth doing with the NS1 to help it along is, especially if there's low frequency elements in the noise floor which aren't in the original audio, then the best thing to do is to filter those off first The NS1 seems to be really good at handling noise that's in the same bandwidth as the audio that you're trying to keep, but it starts to not be as effective if you've got audio outside of that area. So in this particular case, we've got a church with a lot of low frequency rumble from the traffic outside. So we can wind in the NS1, having filtered it off, and the NS1 can do a really good job of removing the higher frequency noise problems because I've filtered off the low frequency stuff already.
The sight of this picture many years ago was that this was Mary with the child Jesus, but I have come...
So there we go, a quick little look at the Waves NS1. And if we compare it to its perhaps its bigger brothers, let's take a look now at the W43. And if we just put those back to their normal settings, and then hit the bypass, and so we'll just bypass the EQ that I put in, and we'll bypass the NS1. So what we've got now is the Waves W43,
carrying the infant Jesus away,
and now
from
I can use
blast.
this.
But perhaps, Father, you can explain a little
To-
bit more about the painting.
Well, my understanding when I first caught sight of this picture many years ago was that this was Mary with the child Jesus, but I have come to understand from writings that
So
the
there we
child
go.
is in fact the whole of humanity
Bypass,
being sheltered from the nuclear blast.
and it's
by this
so much
very
more
strong
of a natural effect. Not starting to hear the processing starting to happen. I haven't had to EQ the low frequency off. And so if we now bypass that and go to its bigger brother, the WNS Noise Suppressor, and we zoom in and give it perhaps a little bit of noise to learn, and now we can listen to that.
I'm in the interior of the church, and I'm standing before a monumental painting by Pietro.
So that's taken just exactly what the settings from the suggest option. Haven't made any adjustments to these at all.
Jesus away from the blast. But perhaps,
And now
Father, you can
if I bypass that,
explain a little bit
Yes.
more about the painting.
Well, my understanding when I first caught sight of this picture many years ago was that this was...
so you can
Mary
see
with the
how
child
really
Jesus,
well the
but I
WNS
have come
is
to
doing.
understand from,
So really, in many respects, it's horses for courses. You can obviously low-cost, simple solution with the NS1, and especially if you help it along by filtering off low-frequency content before you feed it into the NS1, does a really nice job. But as so often is the case, as you get further up the range from the W43 to the WNS, you get better and better results. There you go, a quick look at the NS1 and how you can get the best out of it, looking at real material, and then comparing it to its bigger brothers, the W43 and the WNS. I'll see you soon.